So in this session, I'm going to set up my machine so that I can develop and debug JavaScript. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install Node.js. Now you can simply Google Node.js and that will get you to the home page where you can download Node.js. And I'm going to install the latest and greatest version. So I'm going to click on this and you can see that the installer has now been downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say open when done, and that brings up the Windows installer for Node. So it takes a while, and once it's ready, I'm going to click next, going to accept the terms and the license agreement, click next again, and it populates with the default location for installing Node.js, and I'm going to go ahead and stick with that. So I'm going to say next. I want it to install all of the common features, so I'm going to leave the defaults and click on next and then click on install. And through the magic of video editing, I now have the latest version of Node installed. Open my Node command prompt. And now if I type in node-v, I see that I have version 7.1.0. So I now have Node 7.1.0, which is the latest version. Once you've installed Node, you've also installed something called NPM, which is the Node Package Manager. The Node Package Manager, NPM, is updated much more frequently than Node, so it's always a good idea to make sure that you have the latest and greatest version of NPM. Searching the internet, I found this handy command for installing the latest version of NPM. It's npm install npm at latest -g. So to make sure that I don't type anything wrong, I'm actually going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it into my Node command prompt. Now that I have it there, I just hit enter, wait for the magic to happen, and now I know that I have the latest and greatest version of NPM installed. If I type in npm -v, I can see that I'm using version 3.10.9. So now I've got the latest and greatest NPM installed on Node.js. So now that I've installed the latest version of Node and I've installed the latest version of NPM, it's time to install my code editor. I've decided to use Visual Studio Code. So I Google Visual Studio Code, follow the link, and in my case I'm using Windows, which it automatically detected, so I just click on Download for Windows. And you'll notice that down here, the download has begun. And once it has completed, all I have to do is just click here and say open. And I'm just going to click through and I'm going to use the default. So I'm just going to say next, accept the license agreement, say next. I am fine with the default location where it's going to download Visual Studio Code. So I click next. I do want it to create shortcuts and start menus. It makes it easier for me, so I just say next. And I do want it to add Visual Studio Code to my path to make it easier to run. And I just click install. And through the magic of video editing, I now have the latest version of Visual Studio Code installed on my Windows machine so that I can use it. So to make sure that everything worked just fine, I'm going to leave this checkbox Launch Visual Studio Code checked and click Finished. And there it is, the latest version of Visual Studio Code ready to use. At this point, I've installed Node on my machine and I have installed Visual Studio Code. So when I go over here to my Start menu, I can see that I have something called Node.js command prompt. So I'm going to double click on that, which starts it. So it opens up what's called a command prompt in a specific directory on my machine. In my case, it's opening this command prompt at C users John Reynolds. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a directory on my file system where I can start working on my JavaScript projects. So I'm going to say mkdir, and you could call that makedir. This is a Windows command that creates a new folder in your file system. And I'm going to name this folder learn JavaScript, and then just press enter. And that created a new directory on my file system. So if I type dir, these are all of the directories that I have created on my file system. And we see that there's a new one called learn JavaScript. So I want to move into that directory. So I'm going to change the directory that my command prompt is looking at. And that's CD for change directory to learn JavaScript. Now, if I just press tab, it's going to complete that string for me. That's one of the nice things about the command line. I don't have to type in everything. As soon as I've typed in enough characters that it can figure out the rest, it'll do it for me. So once I have CD learn JavaScript, I'm going to just hit return and see how the prompt changed. So now it has moved into this new directory, learn JavaScript. Now that I'm here, I want to start up my Visual Studio Code editor. And I can do that by simply typing code space dot. The dot is basically saying start code here where I am right now. So it's going to start code pointing at, in my case, C users John Reynolds learn JavaScript. So if I hit return, it simply came back, but it opens a new window. And in that new window is Visual Studio Code pointing to the Learn JavaScript directory. Now, Visual Studio Code tries really hard to keep it up to date. As I mentioned in previous sessions, these tools are changing all the time. So Visual Studio Code has detected that, oh, there's a different version. And I always recommend that you accept those changes. So I'm going to say update now. And through the magic of being able to edit the video, now I have the latest October of 2016 version of Visual Studio Code so that I can start working on my projects. Okay, so now I have Visual Studio Code installed and I have Node installed. And now I want to configure my directory so that I can use Node and NPM to create my applications. So I go back to my command script, and in the Learn JavaScript directory, I type in npm init. This is going to create a special configuration file for me called package.json, and it's going to initialize the folders that I'm going to need to successfully use npm and create my projects. So it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. So the name, by default, is going to be Learn JavaScript. That's fine. Oh, interesting. The name cannot contain capital letters, so that's fine. I'll just type in learn JavaScript, all lowercase, press return, version 1, description, this package is to help me learn JavaScript, entry point index.js, that's fine, test command, I'm going to ignore that for right now. Git repository, that's an advanced concept that we'll talk about later. Keywords, not going to enter any. License, ISC is fine. This is fine, so I'll just say OK. And now if I come back over to Visual Studio Code, I see that there's a new file called package.json. Click on that, and this is the file that was created for me. So now I really am set up and ready to create a Node-based JavaScript project.